Oh, oh, are you guys still here? Oh, I'm sorry. I canceled the game and then the end of the year got. Okay, I should probably just make a video. Hi, my name is Joe and I run games, and the game that I'm running today, as usual, is Draw Steel. Specifically, we are in session 8 of my Draw Steel campaign called A Study in Effluence. There's cosmic horror happening. Or I think today there's more cosmic horror happening than usual. You'll see. But first, hooray! We saved the city from rot zombies. And the first thing the PCs do after they save the city from rot zombies is to go interrogate Sister Cavino. You saw this one coming. And as you can imagine, they came hard. However, there's something I, and some of you, know about Sister Cavino that my players don't know. She has this sort of cheat code when she talks to people that not a lot of people have ever heard of. It's this thing called lying. Have you heard of this? It's where you say things that aren't true, and oftentimes people just sort of believe you. And I know in your own life, this is not actually a tactic that will make you super popular, so you probably should deploy it cautiously. But Sister Cavino deploys it compulsively, and she is the best at it. Sister Cavino has a trait on her sheet that just says perfect liar. You can't tell. Short of deploying divinatory magic, there is no way to know the woman is lying. Unless, you reason it out yourself, which of course the PCs are free to do. So the PCs rightfully ask her, why was there a cage of zombies in your basement and how did they get out? And of course she says that she was studying them to find out how to cure the disease they had and trying to figure out what was causing them to rise after death. She was trying to fix the disease and she needed test subjects. She also claimed that she had no idea how the wall got weakened, but after Vanish let slip that he had seen some ghosts in her basement, she immediately said, well, it must have been the ghosts then. They must have been mad at me and they were trying to claw their way out of my basement. And that sounds like reasonable ghost activity to her. The PCs do not entirely believe this, but they're not sure they want to start a fight right now again. Especially since she's being very civil, right? She's being polite. She offered them tea. Nobody drank the tea. I don't understand why people don't trust this woman. But again, she's one of 2 healers in town. They need her. So the PCs say, well, look, while we're looking into this, we think you should be put into protective custody for your own good. They call up the guards and they say, hey, please go take this woman someplace safe. And we will come by, in the next couple of days to talk to the Praetor about what's going on. And the guards, these are guards from the military, so they get it done. And of course, while she's gone, the PCs search her house and they find all kinds of cool stuff. Obviously, they find indications that she had been growing rot and fungus and other sort of gross shit in her basement in big urns, and some of which they dumped bleach and vinegar and stuff into to neutralize. She happened to have some cleaning supplies on hand. Of course she did. She has to clean. They found drawers with things like maggots and beetles eating away at various body parts, some of which belonged to animals, some of which belonged to humans. Essentially, they found her little rot shrine. And they were like, what are we going to do about this? We'll figure it out tomorrow. No big deal. We'll give it a couple of days. Corinne left her a spooky note in a drawer. That was really fun. And then they took off, and we are officially in a respite. I don't know how long the sound effect goes here. There may not be a sound effect. It'd be embarrassing if there were no sound effect. So we enter a respite. Vanish and Marta go to speak with Kitch. Vanish is basically just bringing him up to speed, and Marta is being brought up to speed. Nothing too amazing here. But they want to find out what's going on with the Raiden Whites. Vanish sort of fills him in a little bit on what happened with Sister Cavino. And what they learn from Kitch about the Raiden Whites is that his people found tin in their mountain. It's not exactly where they live, but it's in the area, and it is a thing that they could mine. They could make themselves a pretty penny, even just owning it. And he recommends that they speak to somebody official about it. Because from his point of view, if tin starts coming out of that mountain and a bunch of Raiden Whites start profiting, a bunch of humans are going to suddenly decide that they want that mountain. They're going to have to deliver freedom to the Raiden Whites. You get it. And so they set up a meeting with the prefect of land negotiation. His name is Gaspar Antonio de Rivera. Which reminds me, we also finally figured out what Vanish's real name is. It's Eligio Ortiz Delgado, which is a badass name. Okay. So they go talk to de Rivera, and, this he's a politician, but he's also like a retired explorer type, right? He's kind of like not really a retired adventurer, but sort of a retired, not what a retired adventurer looks like in a fantasy world, but what a retired adventurer looks like in the real world. And, he's a fun guy. He's got good stories to tell. And he legitimately, they enter into a negotiation with this guy and they get his interest as high as 4. That was pretty good. If you don't know how negotiations work in this game, I'm not going to tell you. What I'm going to do is I'm going to link a video in the doobly-doo to a video that just came out from the Dice Society. Checking. The Dice Society. He just put out a video today about how montages and negotiations work. And honestly, he's better at this shit than I am. So if you want to learn more about that, then go down there and take a look at it. It's great. But the point is, they get into a negotiation with this guy, and it's casual. It's a nice back and forth. It's not too tense. Perfect sort of respite negotiation. And they get his interest as high as 4. They have a little bit of trouble getting it up higher than that just because there's only so much this guy wants, right? And there's only so much they can give him. They can only promise so far. But essentially, he's a bureaucrat. They offer him right of refusal on the first tin that comes out of the mountain. So this guy gets basically first dibs on the tin. And in exchange, what he says is, I will go ahead and fast track a deed. Because there's a difference between owning something because you live there and owning something because the Thessalan government says you own. Just putting in the deed is dangerous. Because you file the paperwork, next thing you know, everybody wants to know why you filed the paperwork. And suddenly that paperwork is moving very slowly through the courts, and somebody else slides in there and takes your shit. Happens all the time. So he is willing to fast track that for them so that nobody else can slide in there and take this land away from the Raiden Whites in exchange for just a little looky-loo at the tin coming out of the mountain. If you are thinking to yourself, don't I remember the PCs giving Kitsch also first rights on any tin that comes out of the mountain? Yes. Yes, they did. I'm sure that won't be a problem. Then comes several days worth of storms. Wait a minute. Several days worth of storms. On Thursday night, the storm is loud, and the PCs hear something breaking outside of Marta's shop. And Marta's thinking, great, more shit for me to fix. As it turns out, it was shit she had already fixed. They go outside. Marta had just replaced the top rail at the stables on the corner. That rail came down during the zombie attack. She had just replaced it, and it's already broken again. Some horse, it looks like, had tried to vault the rail, except that, of course, as they get closer through the night and the rain, they see that what was actually hanging from the rail was the front half of a horse, because the back half had been just completely torn off and was just gone. So first off, they're checking the skies to make sure they're not going to die. Nobody knows what's going on. Was that a wyvern? Was that a dragon? Was that someone with very big hands? Unclear. But now they have 2 problems. They have a broken rail, which keeps the other horses in. And just the stable is currently just being run by a night hand. So this guy's useless, right? He wrangles the horses, but that's all he does. And they have this big, gross corpse just laying in the middle of the main thoroughfare here. And they don't want people to come out of their houses and see that. So we get to talk a little bit about waste disposal in a town like this. And this isn't just about horses. This is about anytime something attacks. Goblins attack. What do you do with those bodies? There's going to be bodies, right? Bandits attack. What do you do with those? Well, it turns out that what we do in this scenario is we run and get the butcher. And he comes across town with a tarp, and then Titus and the butcher roll this front half of a horse onto the tarp, and they haul the thing back to his shop. And he, lifts it up onto hooks and very quickly and efficiently cleans this horse up. Some of that meat goes to Titus. Some of that meat is going to get sold to people. The bones get sent off to the glue people. The skin gets sent off to the skin people. It's just a gross conglomeration of body parts that this guy knows exactly what to do with. And the rain washes away the blood. No muss, no fuss. But that wasn't the only death that night, because about a half an hour later, Vanish noticed that the vengeance mark he placed upon Sister Cavino was gone. The PCs rush south to Sister Cavino's house, and they find that there is already a small gathering of people outside the house, and that Sister Cavino has been strung up between her house and the next house, and she is dead as a doornail. And there's a little sign in front of her that reads, "Killed for crimes against the people of Fort Sinham by the authority of the Raven Court." What is a Raven Court? Well, check out my prep video if you want to know. I'm not going to tell you here. My players watch these things. You'd think that would be it, the introduction to the next thing. But life would be boring if there was only one thing going wrong at a time. And so we continue our theme of waste disposal. The storms continue for a few more days, and Titus gets a runner sent out to his house to inform him that Barrius Major, the prefect of Coin, would like to meet him at the North Warehouse the following day, or when the storms clear up. Now, Barrius Major is technically Titus's boss, assuming he wants to remain a tax collector, so he goes out to meet this guy. The rest of the gang comes along. Vanish, for the most part, remains unseen because Vanish. And Barrius Major is there. He is a big, swampy-looking dude who has come in his own carriage. He has a servant there to set some steps down for him so that he can get out of the carriage, and then prop up a huge umbrella for him while his servant kind of stands outside the umbrella and gets wet in the spitting rain, and then leads this dude as well as the PCs over to the warehouse, and then his servant goes and opens the door. You get it. So he takes them inside and says, well, we've got a big sort of problem here. So half this warehouse is full of trade goods. This is things like stock lumber and excess rice and some finished goods, right? Shit Marta makes, clothes, a lot of socks for some reason. The other half of this warehouse is full of linen-wrapped corpses. This is where the unwashed masses go when they cannot afford a grave in the cemetery. They come here in what amounts to cold, dark storage until such a time as the priests who work the paupers' graves can come and pick them up and cart them out of town. And Barrius Major informs the PCs that the priests who do this run have not been here in several weeks, and the corpses are starting to pack up, and he would like this warehouse cleared out. And so he is hoping that Titus, and by association, the crew, will do something about this, because they have been very good problem solvers so far. Now, Titus knows this isn't his job description. And he thinks, if I'm going to do this, I might as well get some, authority out of it. So he tells Barrius Major that he is happy to take the management of the pauper's graveyard off of his hands. And he will take care of this, and in the future it will just be his job. Now, Barrius Major is a man who likes his power and he likes his authority, and he does not want to give these things up, but he is also the sort of man who would outsource his poops if he could. And so he weighs the two options, right? The tiny scrap of authority that half a warehouse gives him versus the having to do paperwork, and he decides in favor of not having to do paperwork and hands this thing over to Titus and crew, and it is now their responsibility. This crew has a habit of making things their responsibility before they know they can fix them. Are you noticing that? I'm sure that won't be a problem. So he gets directions to the pauper's grave, which is out of town. It's about 8 hours away. 6 or 8 hours, basically. You can get there in a day, but not close enough that it smells. Not even on a very humid day. And so we head off to where the pauper's graves are. And they arrive, hold on, there we go. They come upon just the creepiest little fucking place. It's a little cabin with these creepy little handcrafted idols and symbols to the black gods, Brasso Vasili and Swiss Niobe. Quick religion lesson for those of you who have not read my oversized private setting document. Brasso Vasili is the god of death in the underworld and the murderer of the gods. He is the brother of Orianos. It's a whole god thing. Swiss Niobe is the goddess of the night and darkness and terror. And she is the sister of Vasili and Orionos, again, god families. And this little shitty horror movie cabin is just lousy with idols and decorations dedicated to them. And there's a little barn and a little trough behind that and a little rocky hillside with a big crack in the side that sort of is the entrance to a creepy cave. Basically, this is exactly the kind of place you want to go on vacation. If you ordered an Airbnb off of like VAT19, this is what you're going to get. Buyer beware. There is also a young woman sitting on the porch. And as they get closer, she doesn't really react. She just kind of sits there like Forrest Gump. And they talk to her and they get nothing but like a faint little grin. And then an old man comes out onto the porch, a very old man. This is Brother Lars, a dedicant of Vasily. He happily introduces himself and offers to show them around, despite the fact that the place is the size of 2 matchboxes. And it turns out that the woman is called Sister Amelia. She is a priestess of Niobe. Her family settled Fort Sinum pretty early, and they're worker class. Her mom is, I think, dead, and her dad is like a janitor at the stadium. She came out here after being called by Niobe because people tend not to like the folks dedicated to the black gods. What a surprise. And so they work here tending to the dead. He was mentoring her and teaching her the various rites because he's getting up there and he needs an apprentice. And he noticed that she had started forgetting things. Amelia said that she had been seeing visions, that when she went out at night to make offerings to Niobe, sometimes she would see this beautiful, shining creature, shining brightly, not Niobe. Doesn't scream terror night goddess to me. Over time, it sort of consumed her mind. And then up a few days ago, as he was starting to get real worried, she forgot her very last thing. And now she just sits there on the porch. And according to Brother Lars, she will still do things if she's told. She can still go to the bathroom and eat and drink and stuff, but she has to sort of be walked through that. She is basically empty. And that is why Brother Lars has not been into town to collect the dead. He says he's basically been hoping that she would just up and get better. And she didn't. And so he agrees with the PCs that now it is probably time to take her into town and see if he can't find a place to get her cared for. He thinks maybe that nice priestess lady on the south end of town will take her. And it is time for him to take the donkey in the cart and start collecting the dead again. Okay, so that's one problem more or less taken care of. It does create another one. And while they're here, I mean, they are PCs after all, they're like, well, why don't you take us out to take a look at the place where she's been doing her offerings, where she had these visions, and we'll see if we can't figure anything out. Okay. So they head out there. Well, they head out there during the day. The conditions are completely different, but they do find her altar, which is basically this like sort of massive idol of Niobe made of this swoopy grass. And it like has sort of a gross mask attached to it as a face, and it's all bound together around something. And we get some interesting information here. For example, Corinne immediately recognizes this as an idol, as a place that you would make offerings, a sort of shrine. And it seems very familiar to her. And she's like, well, why is that very familiar to me? This is making me nervous. Why do I know this stuff? And Marta, being a woodworker, and straw is adjacent to wood, the straw is how you fix the bucket. She's like, I think what's going on here is that there's something in the middle that all this stuff is bound up against. Now, I have to admit that when they took apart the idol, they were very nervous. And I did very briefly consider going full edgelord on them. But the thing in the middle of that was like a stone shaped like a skull in the center, and it was all wrapped around this, basically like a religious artifact. The point being, apart from all these like evil idols and dark god worship, everything here seems kind of normal, actually. Apart from that, Mrs. Lincoln, how was the theater? Meanwhile, back at the house, Vanish stayed behind. He works better alone. And he makes his way to the cave where the paupers' graves are. Now, there's not much finery. There's no silver like you might have at a regular cemetery to ward against or in favor of the dead. There's not a lot of wrought spell work here. There are some water features sort of carved into the side of the cave, little shallows for water to gather, which is also pretty traditional for cemeteries. But standing water like this isn't actually that much of an impediment against the dead. This is more ornamental than anything else. It's the magical equivalent of one of those chain link fences that is at shin level around your property. Anyway, he hears moans and whispers coming from deep in the cave, and Vanish, for those of you who are playing the home game, just had a very bad experience with a ghost trying to take over his body, and he does not want to be alone with ghosts right now. So he backs away and waits for the rest of the PCs to come back, which they do. So immediately, Titus and Marta began working with Brother Lars to get the donkey all saddled up and get Sister Amelia onto the cart, and get Brother Lars's provisions packed up. And they are just going to accompany him on the road. While they are doing that, Corinne and Vanish decide to investigate the paupers' graves themselves. Down, down they go into the stinkiest of cheese caves. Slowly, cautiously, ever aware, they move into the area where things are in fact developing a rind. Essentially, the way the paupers' graves work is there's just a regular-sized cave here, and they stack bodies starting at the back. And when they get a new body in, they put a bunch of mud on top of it that dries and creates a little cairn for the dead. And when the next one comes in, they either stack it in front or on top, right? They're kind of honeycombed in there, and they make these little rows. Actually, kind of like a cheese cave. That's gross. And there are, as we suspected, ghosts down there. Not a lot. When the two of them head down there, several just sort of flee back into the areas where the bodies are, maybe fleeing to their own bodies. And even this close to their own bones, these ghosts are clearly very weak. These are not the powerful, angry poltergeists that the PCs just recently did battle with. These are sad little, pauper ghosts. But they do communicate a little bit. They only one of them can speak at all. And that one shows Vanish where its bones are and asks him to help. And Vanish is like, well, I might be able to help. What can I do? And she says, well, you'll have to go into town and kill my mother. She tells Vanish that her mother poisoned her and that she can't pass on while her mother still lives and remembers her, and while her bones are still in the ground here, and she wants a chance to pass on. Vanish says he'll see what he can do. Speaking of seeing what we can do, back top, we are loading up Brother Lars as Vanish and Corinne come out of the creepy cave. And he is talking about how he was really hoping that, they'd see something he hadn't seen, because he was hoping to have some better news for the tedious woman. And the PCs are like, I'm sorry, tedious woman? What tedious woman? And he's like, oh, well, purely coincidence, of course, but the tedious woman, she came out here a couple weeks ago. Yeah, about last week, because her son is having visions very much like the ones that Sister Amelia was having. And her son is also sort of starting to forget things. And he was hoping that he would figure it out. Now, this started before the woman came out here. So what he assumes is that, she went into town and she tried all the usual resources there. And like people do, when they're out of options, they turn to the black gods. And unfortunately, in this scenario, the black gods were unable to help either, and he thinks that's a shame. And so the PCs decide that whatever this is, it's spreading. And now it's time to go out to the Tedious Farm. Remember the Tedious Farm? They're out by the Chapata Farm, the rice people. Anyway, they decide it's time to head out to the Tedious Farm and see what is going on. So the two groups split ways. Brother Lars, a basically empty Sister Amelia, and an empty cart head off to where the bodies are kept, and the PCs veer off, and they spend the night at the Chapata Farm, and we get to say hi to the Chapata family. Diego's kind of stumping around on a cane, and things seem to be going pretty well there. They even think they can probably pay taxes this week, finish off their taxes. So that's good for the PCs. That's good news. And they spend the night at the Chapata Farm, and they are fed and taken care of. And in the morning, we head out to the Tedious Farm, but we don't, because that's the end of this session. So tune in next week to find out. Don't tune in next week. I'm not going to be here next week. But tune in next time to find out what is going on with these sort of beautiful visions. What does that have to do with the dead Sister Cavino? Does that have anything to do with a half a dead horse? I don't know. Okay, I know. Anyway, if you think this sounds cool, you want to play Draw Steel for yourself, there will be a link in the doobly-doo. You can head over to MCDM and grab the game and run yourself some Draw Steel. The Summoner just dropped. It's a new class where you can basically summon an army of awesome little dudes. You can summon like undead or elementals or fairies. It's really cool. You want to play one. If this sounds like a cool story, tune in here next time. I'll be telling more of this. And if you are interested in running your own Draw Steel game and you want to know how the heck does one prep for a Draw Steel game, I have prep videos on this very channel. If you like the way I tell stories and you're interested in that, I have whole books written in this exact same setting. And you can go over to crownsforgotten.com. And my first one is almost entirely published online at this point. There's like 3 more chapters to go. I publish one a month. So you could start reading it today and you will probably be caught up by the time the epilogue hits. All right, that's all I got. Catch you later.